All right, we are on chapter 51, my favorite chapter, generally yours too. All about animal behavior. And it's about why do animals do what they do. Now, the hardest part about this chapter is, yes, this does apply to humans as well, but for this class, when we're talking about behavior, we're talking about anything but humans. Why do animals do what they do? Is it because it's innate and they were born with it and it's in their DNA? Or is it something that their parents, their brothers and sisters, their species taught them to do? And yes, this does happen with humans, but again, we're going to focus on animals. So as we do this, try not to anthropomorphize animals. What is that? Well, here's an example video. We'll watch a little bit. Showing oh, hold on. Okay, here it is.
Nighttime, daytime, nighttime, daytime, nighttime, daytime. How are you doing? Having a game of nighttime, daytime. You want to play? I tell you what, I don't seem to have a lot of love with women. I mean, I'm kind and caring and... That's a mystery, that. Alan! 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 Ow! Alan! Low-legged legs, look at her. Oh, I am looking. Stop looking at her! You just told me to look at her. Ow! 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 That's what I mean, oh, that. John, I don't think we're allowed to win. It's fine, we'll just keep a lookout. What was that? That was me saying. Whoa! Where did all these come from? You know me, lads, I can't win with an audience. Alan! 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 Alan!
We'll watch a couple more.
I'm Sabertooth! Wolverine! Sabertooth! Wolverine! Sabertooth! Wolverine! Sabertooth! You can't get me a Wolverine! I'm Sabertooth!
Fuck it, you know I'm working nights.
Cheer up, sir. Oh, all right, Bernie. Here, catch you. This fella and a giraffe walk into a bar. Giraffe goes to sleep on the floor. Farmer says, "Oi, what's that lion there?" Fella says, "It's not a lion, it's a giraffe." Giraffe! You cut me up, sir.
You just like to open wide, sir. Okay. You going anywhere nice on your holidays? Yeah, don't try and talk when my hands are in your mouth, sir. My wife and I are thinking of going abroad this year. Dudley. She's got family in the zoo over there. You got kids? Yeah. Please don't talk when my hands are in your mouth, sir. Yeah. Do the fill-in here, actually, at the back. Is it mainly bananas you eat? Yeah, I won't tell you again, sir. Please don't try and speak when I'm working inside your mouth. Right, I'm sure a cheeky little taste. That's not bad, actually. Not much done, just need to smell your breath. Oh, that is rank. I think I need to lie down. Oh, Alan! Ow! Alan!
Excuse me, mate. I think you're in my stand.
Can't you just stand somewhere else, mate?
No, look, I've reserved this space here. Can you move?
No, I'm not moving. You move.
Are you going to move or not?
No.
Right, that's it.
Whoa, get off.
Just move, will you?
You move.
Oh, just move.
You move.
Oh, move.
You move.
Move.
You move.
Move.
You move.
Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move. Move.
Okay. That is a great place to stop. So again, don't think that they think like humans do. Don't anthropomorphize them. They have completely different reasons for doing what they do, and a lot of it doesn't involve the upper level thinking that humans have. So, studying animal behavior, you know, everyone wants to work at the zoo when they grow up at one time in their life, and that's what a lot of times they do at the zoo, is try and learn behaviors. So why study this? Well, again, we want to try and figure out what led to this. What's the evolution connection that led to this particular behavior? And does this behavior increase their fitness? Do they have more offspring because of it? Do they survive better because of it? So when we're looking at animal behavior, we break it down into two types of questions. The how or what, or the proximate causes. What are they doing, or what triggers the singing, and how do they sing? The ultimate cause is, well, why? What is the why? How does this help them evolutionarily? There had to have been something that drove this type of behavior to occur. So, courtship behavior. You know, how does day length influence breeding? We know in the winter the daytime is shorter versus the summer the daytime is longer. And birds, they don't want to give birth, you know, they don't want to lay eggs in the winter because the offspring aren't going to survive. So why do they breed in the spring? Because when the eggs hatch, the weather is nice, everything's in bloom, there's lots of insects, there's lots of fish, their chances of survival are greater. So looking at these behaviors also, we're breaking it into innate versus learned. And what is the advantage? What's an advantage of having a behavior that is just there? No one had to teach it to you. You can survive. And this is a very beneficial behavior for lower level organisms that, you know, like the sea urchins from the last video. They're floating around and they've got no one to guide them, no one to protect them. They're out on their own. They're going to need to have built-in things that tell them to do stuff, otherwise they just die off, and that's not biologically fit, that's not evolutionarily advantageous. So every creature has some sort of innate behavior or innate behaviors. Not every creature has learned behaviors. You have to have the brain and the thought process that's going to allow you to learn. So a lot of times you only see the learned behaviors in the higher level of the evolutionary scale. So ethology, again, is the technical name for studying the science of animal behavior. And where this all started were some guys who played with the bees, someone that played with swans and ducks, geese, sorry. So let's start with innate behaviors. These are things that you are born with. And I saw this earlier in the year. See if the video will play. When I went to a park in California, and the pelicans landed in the lake. Dramatic pause. Okay, it's working. Sorry. Here we go. So just watch them, and what's going to trigger them to all dip at the same time. And then comes the question of why. Oh, you can see the one got one. So he got one, so he's leaving the group. So they're working together. Oh, he decides to come back and help. To increase the chances that their whole group gets a fish. And they're basically hurting the fish under the water so that one of them gets it. So is that innate or a learned behavior? Well, you'd have to, I honestly don't know. You'd have to look into it. But an example of innate behavior, and these are the vocab words, they love to put this one on the AP exam, is a fixed action pattern. And it's kind of like OCD in humans. It's once you start something, you can't do anything else until you've finished this behavior. So something has to start it. You get a stimulus, and then I'm looking at the video, I'm multitasking. And then you react. So let's see if this one. So what started is, this is the stickleback. They love to put questions about the stickleback on the test. There's the female. There's the males usually have a red belly. And so they were testing to see if this male stickleback would respond to certain stimulus. Well, you've got the female, and he's not, there's nothing there that tells him that this is an intruder that's going to fight on his turf. Maybe later when it's the right time, he'll court her, do their mating rituals or whatever. But right now, she's not a threat. So they gave him a little bit of resting time. Then they put in something that was similar in shape. And it sees the red, and it's going to attack. Doesn't matter that it's another fish. Its brain isn't developed enough to go, oh, that's not a real fish. And then here comes one. Oh, it's got the red. Even though it's not the right shape, it's got the red belly. It's going to attack. So we can see fixed action patterns in a lot of things. It's just you just respond, and you've got to complete that response before you can really do anything else. Another example we see that in is digger wasps. And what they do is they go to their hole. They have to go inside their hole to make sure that nothing's in there. And once they know that their hole is safe, then they drag their lunch in there. But what scientists do is, okay, the wasp goes in to check the hole. Scientists take their cricket or whatever their food is, and they move it back. And because it's not exactly where they left it, the digger wasp has to drag it back to the hole, which sends out that stimulus. You better check the hole. And even though they just checked it 2 seconds ago, they have to check it again. We see it in geese. If an egg rolls out of the nest, that's the stimulus for it to drag it back in. So what scientists did is that while they were rolling the egg back up, we moved it. And the goose didn't go, oh, well, the egg's not there. Let me stop and get the egg again. It had to complete that action till it was done. It had to do it till the end, a fixed action pattern. We can see it in humans. A German scientist found that, rapid brow raising, you can see how the eyebrows came up, coincides with, raising your eyelids. And it's something that, regardless of culture, any human, a lot of time, most of the time, I shouldn't say every human, because I'm sure there's always exceptions, have when you put a baby in front of them, is they raise that eyebrow. So evolutionary advantageous in humans, I can't think of a reason why, but there's got to be something. So again, when it comes to animal behavior, stick with the animals. They're only going to question you on animals, not human behavior. Now, another type of behavior we see is not just fixed action patterns, but what's called a supernormal stimulus. And that's where you do more to a bigger sign. So the experiment they did for this is they took seagulls, baby seagulls, and when mommy seagull comes back to bring baby seagulls food, they peck at her. Here's, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me. Feed me first, whatever. And so what they did is they took a dead pelican and took the head and put it in front of the babies and counted how much they peck at the mommy seagull. And that was kind of their control. Then they took a puppet that looked very similar, but it's a cloth puppet, so it wasn't exact. And they saw that, it was pretty close. It was pretty close to the same. And, you could do your chi-square to see if there was a statistically significant amount difference, but close enough. Then they said, well, is it the head or is it the bill? So then they just took the bill at the end of a stick and put it in front of the seagulls, the baby ones, and saw that it was, again, pretty much the same. So they started thinking, well, maybe it's not the shape, maybe it's the color that was the stimulus. And let's see what happens when we just take a big old stick that's all red and put it in front of the babies. And when they did that, well, you can see it's drastically, probably statistically significant increase in how much they peck. So we know that red is the stimulus, and if you give them a lot of red, they get a supernormal stimulus. And there are some people who think that, hey, that's what lipstick's meant to do in humans. So, supernormal stimulus. And again, these are all innate. Mommy didn't teach you that. It's in your DNA. Another type of innate behavior is moving. And there's two ways we describe these, reactions, these behaviors of movement, and that's taxis or taxis and kinesis. Taxis is when you're moving and you change direction. Now, it could be a positive taxis. Hey, you're going, wait, there's something red over there. You got that way. Or it could be a negative taxis. For this one, I think of the cockroach when you turn the light on and then they go and they quick run away from the light. That's a negative taxis. They're trying to get away from the light. Very common in insects. And that's it. Now, kinesis is you're still moving, but something makes you move faster. So again, we see it a lot in insects. If we take our little pill bug, we put them in a dry area, a dry open area. their innate is get out of there. You are gonna die. Get out. Get out. Go find shade. Go find moisture. Move. And so it'll go from moving slow, to fast. And it's just trying to find a safe spot. So taxis is direction. Again, you see this positive taxis a lot in plants, how they grow to the light. Phototaxis, because it's light. Negative taxis, bugs running away when you turn the light on, so running away from the light. And kinesis is just running faster. So there's got to be some sort of signal that's telling these birds to move. So they change their direction. So you've got taxis going there. Some of them got to move fast. So you have kinesis going on there. And again, it's just innate. And they all just know to do it. You see it a lot of times with fish when they travel in schools. Something's going to trigger one of them to turn, and then the rest just follow. Something's going to trigger one to go faster, and the rest just follow. And all of these are just innate behaviors. A complex innate behavior would be migration. Again, the evolutionary advantageness of it is you're going to go somewhere else where you can survive. If you stay where you are, you're going to die because it's either going to get too cold, too dry, or the food's going to run out, or all the above. So you're going to migrate someplace that is better for your survival. But these animals that migrate, they go to the same places every year. It's usually a seasonal migration. They go someplace nice in the winter and then go back to the other place in the summer. And they go to the same places year after year after year. So how are they doing that? And that's using the sun, well, the stars, the sun, and magnetic fields, which is why every 5,000 years, 10,000 years, that the magnetic fields shift, all the animals get all crazy. All right, so again, just studying migration patterns can just be a whole master's program in on itself. So what I want you to get from this is, we see this especially with birds, and can be butterflies, but birds, they migrate. And you're going to see migration with animals that have the ability. Usually migration is animals that can fly or animals that swim. So you'll see this with a lot of ocean animals, whales, dolphins, that migrate as well. But they've got to have the ability to cover long distances quickly. As you can see, these are pretty long distances. I like this because this is showing you when they migrate. So, hey, it's the spring in North America, so all the birds go there because the weather's nice. And they hang out there. And then it starts getting a little hot, which is kind of their signal that winter's coming. Get the heck out of Dodge. And so then they go south for the winter, because when it's winter here in the northern hemisphere, it's summer in the southern hemisphere. Remember, they're opposites of us. So they're going to go where it's always spring and summer, or summer and fall. They're trying to avoid winter. The birds don't do very well I shouldn't say birds. Some birds don't do very well in the winter. Some birds have evolved and adapted to do very well. So there you go. All right, so that's the innate. You're born with it. Then there's learned behavior. And the bridge between them all is imprinting. And there's a critical period in some animals' lives, not all, where they learn things. So a lot of times is this whole imprinting. We want to make sure things don't imprint on us humans when we're doing conservation. And that Conrad guy, the one was earlier, he learned that, geese can imprint, a lot of birds will imprint on humans. And then they don't think they're a bird anymore, they think they're a human. And if you're trying to do conservation, this could be a very bad thing because the animals are not going to want to leave you because they're not going to know how to be a bird. So in conservation, when it comes to imprinting, we want to avoid that. So we have to teach birds how to be a bird. So every animal that imprints has a certain time period, a critical period. This is when the imprinting occurs. As long as we're with their species at this time period, they will be fine. And that's how the cuckoo bird works. What the cuckoo does, you can consider it a parasite. It lays its eggs in other birds' nests. So when it hatches, the other bird's mom is the one who feeds it. So, it's a great mom, drops its kid off at someone else and lets them raise it for it. But because the cuckoo mom isn't there during that critical period, they don't learn any songs. Any songs they have are completely innate. So they still have songs so they can, breed with each other, mate with each other, all that good happy stuff, but nobody taught them it. It's just what was innate. And it works for them because, mom's never there to teach them. Again, there's study. There is an imprinting critical period in humans, but we don't have to worry about that. So imprinting, kind of just right in the middle, has to be done in a certain period of time. Otherwise, you don't get that learning. Hold on, there's a video I want to show you.
For the first 2 years of their life, these chicks will think of him as mother. They'll trust and follow him above all others. It's a process known as imprinting, and it's something that many birds do from the moment they're born. A few hours later, the hatchlings are already following their oversized mother goose wherever he goes. Christian's ultimate goal is to film these chicks retracing the great journeys of wild birds from his microlight. It's a huge commitment that will continue long after the filming is over. And it will take months of tender care and devotion before he and his new bird family take to the air.
So that's an innate imprinting is an innate behavior, but then once they've imprinted, they're going to learn from that person how to act. So it's kind of one in the middle. Now, learned behavior, we've got one type of learned behavior is called associative learning. And we can break associative learning down into two parts. And it's just basically, learning cause and effect. You associate something good and you want to do it some more, or hey, if I do this, it's bad. So it's a consequence. Operant conditioning is just, trial and error. Monarch butterflies are toxic to birds. They make them sick. And how do birds learn not to eat them? Well, they have to eat one. Then it makes them sick, and they don't eat them anymore. So I love this picture because, there's a bird vomiting right there. Woohoo! Messing with a porcupine. You learn really quick not to do that again. Touching a hot stove. You learn pretty quick not to do it again. When the bell rings, you want to stand up and leave. And fifth or sixth period usually messes you up because the bell rings and you're like, oh wait, no, just kidding. That's operant conditioning. You know to associate the bell ringing with something very good, getting out of class. So that's operant conditioning. Classical conditioning, or Pavlovian conditioning, is something that's no big deal, tells you to be something, it's something good. So let's do an example. The Skinner box is an example of operant conditioning. They took this mouse, put it in this box, and they said, hey, when the light turns on, well, if you push the little lever down, nothing happens. But if the red light goes on and you push the level, you get a little shocked. So that's kind of a operant conditioning. But hey, if you push the level down, or if it's a green light, you get a treat. So it's a way to treat. No, it's a way to train an animal for certain behavior. If you want to train your dog to do tricks, you're going to reward it for its behavior. And you're going to do it over and over again, operant conditioning, until one day you say sit, and they sit down even though you don't have a reward for them. Operant conditioning. So, classical conditioning, again, the Pavlovian is training them a behavior. So what Pavlov did is every time just before he was going to feed his dog, he rang a bell. And the dog, over time, learned that, hey, when the bell rings, food's coming. And how they knew that the dog was excited about food coming was it would drool. So it got to the point that that Pavlov would just ring the bell and the dog would drool, because it was conditioned to know, hey, that bell equals food. It had learned that behavior, and if you did something otherwise, well, I guess you could kind of think of it as a fixed action pattern, sort of a learned one, it would drool. So can we do Pavlov with humans? Of course we can. When you're in elementary school, middle school, maybe even some high school teachers have probably done Pavlov classical conditioning on you. I mean, what would you do for a piece of candy? What would you do for a stamp, for a sticker? So it happens. So classical conditioning and operant conditioning are all types of associative learning. You learn to associate something with a reward or something with a punishment. You learn that, hey, if this happens, if thing A happens, it's going to lead to thing B. And then you adjust your behavior accordingly. Another type of learned behavior is habituation. Now, you've been conditioned that when the bell rings, it's time to go. Then during 5th or 6th period, you hear that first bell and you're like, oh, no. No, I'm not going to fool for that again. Not going to fall for that because I know it's not time to get out yet. That's habituation. You learn to ignore it. It's what they call the cry wolf effect. We can see that in lots of animals. In this particular case here with Mr. Prairie Dog, or was it a groundhog? I think it was a prairie dogs. They give alarm calls when it's in danger. They warn the pack that there's danger around. And they live underground in what they call towns. Prairie dogs live in towns. And because humans build parks and whatever that they do, sometimes there's some towns that are smack dab in the middle of a park. And when one of the openings of the prairie dog to the prairie dog town is right next to a trail where people walk by, that prairie dog is going to give an alarm every time a person walks by, until over time they realize, wow, they kind of get conditioned that a person walking by does not equal danger. So they get habitualized. They undergo habitualization, and they don't react anymore, because screaming bloody murder every time a human walks by, it's a waste of time and energy for the entire group. So they become habituated to humans, and they're not as afraid of them anymore. You can see that sometimes with, if you go out to eat and you're outside and there's pigeons there. A lot of them are habitualized to humans, and they'll just walk right up to get the food. So habituation is learning to ignore things. But it takes time. You need to realize that this thing is not going to hurt me, it's not going to affect me, so I'm going to ignore it. Another learning behavior is problem solving. And this is usually considered for higher level organisms. How do we solve a problem? Well, we know primates do that very well, making tools. Otters make tools. Again, problem solving. It's a great experiment with a chimpanzee. They put a bunch of boxes there and some bananas way up high, and they just left him there. And he problem solved to get the bananas. Another great problem-solving creature is that bloody squirrel. If you want to make $1 million, you need to design a bird feeder that squirrel cannot get into. There are many on the market that claim that to happen, but yeah, if we just do a YouTube search, let's see. Squirrel bird feeder compilation. There we go. Let's see what we got here. There we go. This one's a good one. I've seen it before. Again, someone's trying to make a squirrel-proof bird feeder. Looks like they're doing a good job. Oh, got through the first barrier. So try again. Unlike you guys, the squirrels never give up. And he made it. So again, that's a problem-solving behavior. Another great problem-solving behavior is the crow. And this is just awesome.
Crows have become highly skilled at making a living in these new urban environments. In this Japanese city, they have devised a way of eating a food that normally they can't manage. Dropping a nut from a great height onto a hard road does sometimes crack it, but some nuts are particularly tough. So the crows have devised a better way. Drop it among the traffic. The problem now is collecting the bits without getting run over. So some birds have refined their technique. They station themselves beside pedestrian crossings. Wait for the lights to stop the traffic. Then collect your cracked nut in safety.
Crows are awesome, and they are great problem solvers. So again, problem solving, another learned type behavior. Why do we behave the way around other people? So that's social behavior. So we have innate behavior, we have learned behavior, and we have social behaviors. And that can lead all into this whole, how you act with other individuals of your species, how you act or react with individuals of a different species. And since they don't use words or language like we do, we now know animals communicate with each other, and how they communicate varies. And we're starting to learn a lot more about their languages, and I'm sure one day you'll put a collar on your dog and your dog will bark at you and the collar will translate for you exactly what that means. We're not there yet, but I bet you it's going to be coming. So we know, there it is. Bees communicate through this thing called the waggle dance.
To the untrained eye, this swarm of bees looks like a mass of swarming bugs, but a closer inspection reveals something amazing going on. It has a crazy name.
Wait, did I just hear a scientist say waggle dances? Yes.
Tom Seeley is a bee expert at Cornell University, and he's about to show me one of the most famous animal languages in the natural world.
As she waggles, she's indicating the direction and distance to a potential home site to all of the other bees that you see tripping around behind her.
What? It's just vibrating, dude. How can that bee communicate something so specific just by shaking its little bee butt?
As it turns out, a few wiggles of those striped butts can say a lot. The waggle dance is the way bees communicate with each other, and its discovery in the 1940s was so astounding it won a Nobel Prize.
That kind of ability is very, very special. Well, you and I can do it, and bees can do it. There are almost no other species on the planet that can do that.
Bees use the waggle dance to communicate the precise location of food sources and home sites to their hive mates. See this yellow painted bee here? See how every time she wiggles, she's facing the same direction? She's actually pointing her hive mates in the direction to fly relative to the sun to find a home site. And the length of time she spends wiggling is how far to fly. About a half second of dancing equals a half kilometer of flight distance. It's one of the few animal languages ever decoded, and our host, David Pogue, is about to become fluent.
Aha! This looks like one of your grad student slaves. Oh, David.
Michael.
All right, so how exactly does the waggle dance work?
So the waggle dance will work with a waggle run, which will point the direction of the box that you prefer, that you visited and you like. And if it's a nest site that's a short distance, she'll do a short waggle. If it's a long distance, she'll do a much longer waggle. But the actual pointing of the waggle will show where the nest box actually is. So she gets two things out of it, direction and distance. Well, first, you need your bee goggles to make it really professional.
Protect us from the harmful rays of anyone watching us. I will be doing this? Oh, you don't think this is a job better left to the pros?
No, this is a job for all worker honeybees. So here we go. I'm going to shake my money maker, and I'm going to make it happen. So here we go. Get ready. Listen up. Shake it, and then come back around, and then shake it, and then we'll come back around, and that's a circuit right there. Okay, so shake it, waggle, come back around. Ready?
So again, decoded, bees do communicate, and we've started to learn their language. Oh, went to the videotape earlier. So there you go. Again, it tells direction and distance, which you don't need to memorize, but you just need to know, hey, communication, type of animal behavior. Birds sing. You'll notice all birds have their own song. You can go to YouTube and look up 80 million different bird songs. You can look up 80 million different insect songs. And what type of song they're singing depends on what behavior they're in. Are they in the mood? Are they just trying to say, hey, this is my area, go away? What we found with birds is their song is kind of a mixture of innate. They know to make noise. What they need to sing, the notes on the page, is usually learned. Versus insects who have no, they're just, the parents are not there. They just drop the eggs and usually get eaten by something else. So all of their noise making is completely innate. All right, another type of social behavior is agonistic behaviors. Basically, how do you get dominant? How do you say, this is my territory, go away? And usually you're not trying to kill. Usually you're not trying to kill or harm, because if you're taking it to that degree of violence, there's a chance you're going to get hurt. And animals don't have doctors and hospitals they can go to. So a lot of times you get hurt, you're going to die. So a lot of these agonistic behaviors are for show, but don't usually do a lot of damage. They're all symbolic. So here's examples. Again, they're fighting for territory. but they're really not trying to hurt each other. They're just trying to say, this is my spot. So there you go. Another type of social behavior is more of the dominance, and that's who's your alpha, who's your beta, your pecking order. Now those ones you could get hurt in when you're establishing dominance, which is different than agonistic. Again, this is where you're trying to say, this is my territory, this is my girl, go away. Whereas dominance hierarchy has got to be when there is a group that has a leader. So not all animals are in groups that have a leader, but if they do, you're going to see that social behavior determine who's dominant. So there's some dominance way. There you go. So working together, cooperation, another type of social behavior. Not all animals work in packs. We saw the pelicans herding the video earlier. But again, that's all cooperation, working together. Some species go solo. Okay. Another social behavior is what's called altruistic behavior. And you've probably seen this already. Let's go to the video. I'll fast forward a little bit. There we go.
Anyway, when I was a kid, it was just me and Sven until they, kind of took us in. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't want to scare you. It can be a little inappropriate. And loud. Very loud. They're also stubborn at times and a little overbearing and heavy. Really, really heavy, which you'll get it. They're fun. They mean
Kristoff, they sound wonderful.
Okay then. Meet my family.
So Olaf's about to show altruistic behavior.
He's crazy.
Hey, whoa, recognize me. You lost so much weight.
I'll distract him while you run. Hi, Sven's family. It's nice to meet you. I understand you're love experts. Ooh, aren't you running?
All right. So Olaf there is showing altruistic behavior. He's going to sacrifice himself, but the other person will live. We see that a lot of times when it deals with kin. Okay, so I'm going to die, but I don't have any kids, but at least my nieces and nephews will survive, and at least my alleles will get passed on indirectly to future generations. So that's altruistic. Again, this squirrel here, it lets off a warning sign when predators are around, and a lot of times it sacrifices itself so that its family can get away. And again, not every species has altruistic behaviors. It varies from species to species, and you've kind of got to look at their environment, their level, all those other things that they're dealing with, and that usually explains why evolution has driven them to be, why are you the way that you are? Evolution. All right, so again, some communication, whether it's the honeybee trying to help itself out, to communicate, since most animals don't have vocal cords like we do, how do they communicate with one another? And a lot of times it's just a chemical signal. Yay, chemical communication. And those chemical signals we call pheromones. And different signals produce different responses. You know, you change the shape, you change the response. There can be alarm pheromones, there can be sex pheromones, tons of different times. There's predators that use that to advantage. There's spiders that release moth sex pheromones to lure the prey in and eat them. Mosquitoes, they look for concentrations of carbon dioxide. That's how they know that there's an animal nearby to go feast off of. You can again use it to mark your territory, getting into that other behavior on the territory part. And again, sex. It's always about the sex. Sex or eating. You can go to Amazon and buy human sex pheromones. I don't know if they work or not, but you know, there's your, can go with your essential oils and your non-GMOs and your anti-vax stuff. Oh, let me move this so you can read the bottom. There we go. So again, pheromones, a way of communicating non-verbally. I don't know why I had the mole rats on there, because they're disgusting. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Let's skip that. So again, how you mate, how you are as a parent, a lot of that is determined by your genes. It's an innate behavior, how to breed. I'm sure there's a lot of humans on campus who were never taught how to breed, but yet they still have babies. So it's just innate. The environment can affect it. If you are malnourished, you know, there's not a lot of resources, that's going to affect your behavior. There we go. Okay, so again, I like this slide. It's a great summary of innate versus learned. You can take a look at that and go ahead and come up with any questions. And next class, you're going to be doing an animal behavior lab. You don't have to bring your lab books. Yeah, so see you later.